Welcome back, dear audience. After the short break, I'm your host Sohaib bin Noor with the discussion aisle, and you're watching your favorite channel, Planet FM 87.6. And today we have a special guest, the executive director of PYCA Pakistan Youth Change Advocates, and Miss Areeba Shahid. She was shedding light that what are the challenges that our youth, and especially the young bulge, the young kids, they are facing, their families are facing in getting education. And we were just trying to sort out that what are the possible ways so that we can put these young lot, our treasure, I must say, the future treasure, and the economy, our economy will based on that treasure, inshallah, in some few decades or some years. But how we can make them more productive, how we can make them more useful, and especially that much useful so that they could bring some good change in Pakistan, some prosperity, and of course some happiness for everyone. And we were just talking about that skills, of course, they matter, and even not only skills. I must say that skills along with degree, that matters a lot. And most of the people, when they send their kids to some workshop or even some vocation trainings, they keep on saying that our kid will earn more, and but I must say that if they have a proper degree or proper education relevant to their work, they can excel much better than the one who is not that literate. Coming to you, Mr. Areeba Shahid, how do you think that people keep on saying that he will get a degree, but there are lesser opportunities. He will be an unemployed person. What will happen next? So they have a solid reason, and even I must agree that only degree that is just a receipt of your expenses that you have just made during your education system. But how much skills are important? What will you say?
So I guess given if you take a look at the given trajectory, skills are extremely important, and I say that because so many companies around the world right now are focusing, and I'm talking about very well established organizations, focusing not so much on what the education is in terms of the degree that a person has earned, but the the skill set that she or he has, right? But I do agree the point that you were making earlier, Sohaib, that um, skills, it matters what sort of skill, right?
Exactly.
And when we are talking about higher order skills, a certain level of education is absolutely essential for those higher order skills, right?
Right.
Unless and a certain and that certain level of education begins with basic literacy and then you build on to it. So we can't really say that skills alone are the answer for the 21st century youth.
Exactly.
But we also can't say that the traditional classroom model is something that should stay, right?
Agree.
We have to find middle ground, and that middle ground can actually be found within schools, within colleges, within universities. It's just in terms of the way education is delivered, that needs to change, and that has significantly changed in so many parts of the world. That has actually, in high-end private schools, I see that change here in Pakistan. But then within the government or the public education sector, and then also low-cost private schools, that same shift needs to come, right? Where a classroom is not a place where there's a teacher, she's just writing on the board, and everybody's either copying or just looking blankly and trying to make sense of what's being written or what's being. So that whole idea of being talked at needs to end. So we need to talk to, talk with, not talk
Right.
at, and allow children to ask questions, to help them, and not compartmentalize, put different subjects in different boxes. Integrated learning is something that's been happening across the world for so many, decades now. It's still, STEM and STEAM, these are still relatively new concepts here in Pakistan. Again, relatively new concepts that are very proficiently being implemented in private schools, but although the public sector is making that effort, but that effort needs to be stronger and quicker and harder in the sense that it really needs to have that sort of desired impact. And when I'm talking about integrated learning now, when we're talking about that bridge between formal education and skill-based learning. That's where integrated learning comes into play, right? So, for instance, if students learn math while doing art,
Exactly.
right? When they learn science while drafting poetry, right?
Right.
And there are students who are doing this. I mean, a poem, um, the very arrangement of the verses, how it complements mathematical sets,
Right.
for instance, how certain moves within a dance can teach physics,
Agreed.
right? How and these are not difficult things. These do not. I mean, most of the solutions are low cost and no cost. So I'm not saying that we need big fancy labs or halls or and very teachers who have been educated from Mars.
Exactly.
Right? We just need that will to do this. And we are seeing this happen in the private school. You were earlier talking about public-private partnership. I think this is where this is another form of public-private partnership that I feel needs to be forged, which is that the capacity, the sort of technical understanding that the private schools have, that needs to be transferred and translated, and the public education sector needs to not just learn but also be supported by the private school sector to sort of uplift the public education system.
No, you're much right. And there's, another issue. That is the career counseling.
Yes.
And if I'm doing metric, whether in science or whether in computer sciences, I have no idea where to go. Then I will apply for, of course, medical sciences, in pre-medical and pre-engineering. And if I fail to, compete all my competitors and fail to, get a good admission in at some good university, then I will go towards commerce or other fields.
Yes.
Why we don't have a career counseling at our grassroots level, so we can understand what is the way or what is the avenue that I need to get on, so that I will get my destiny, my destination in an instant. What will you say?
I absolutely agree with that. I think that is a conversation we've been having. We've since I was young. That was many decades ago, right?
You're still young.
I know. So I talked about 20 years ago, or 25 or 30 years ago, the conversation at the dinner table at my home was also, Areeba, you will become a doctor, and I was like, no, I will not, right? But I think it's even. I mean, career counseling is extremely important, and we also need this shift within our, I mean, this is something that all of South Asia needs to do, not just Pakistan, that you don't have to be a doctor or an engineer,
Agreed.
A job will always pay your bills and pay well if you know your job well, right? And if you know your job well, you'll excel. It doesn't matter. And I always tell parents who are insisting that, my son or my daughter, I mean, just tell them they need to become a doctor. And I'm like, presidents, have you ever heard of a president who was, I mean, we have actually a president who was
Exactly.
a doctor, but generally, the leadership cadre comes from the social sciences.
Agreed.
Those who rule us are all social scientists,
Exactly.
right? They either have a degree in political science or sociology or anthropology or economics or law. And I mean, I always tell him, why do you want your child to be a doctor when your child can be the president or the prime minister?
Exactly.
Right? So I mean, it's the way we think, and we need to change that. Now, that same thinking also needs to translate into our schools, because it's not just our parents who feel that unless a child has taken hard sciences, and hard sciences are extremely fascinating and beautiful, and if a child is good at them and enjoys, please by all means pursue. And as a student of social sciences, I've learned much later in life that if I just paid a little more attention to the STEM subjects, I'd do some of my social sciences work better as well. So, that there's a lot of that complementarity. But having said that, even the teachers, for them to write off a student just because that student is not doing good in physics or chemistry, that's colossally unfair. Because maybe that child is a revolutionary thinker, maybe that child is a poet, maybe that child is a wanderer, maybe that's an Ibn Battuta that you're suppressing because, you're not good with numbers.
Exactly.
Right? So that mentality needs to be thrown out of the classrooms also. And when you're talking about career counseling, I think extremely important, extremely, and that sort of career counseling needs to start, I would say, at the primary level, right? Where there are teachers and mentors and guides who can identify what a child's true calling is. Oh, is this child a natural artist? Is this child good with numbers? Is this child, a good public speaker? And then through the years in school and college, sort of pass on that file, pointing out these are the three strengths that we need to focus on with this child. And I think that's how it should be done. Absolutely, I agree with you.
You're much right, and indeed, dear audience, Pakistan is much beautiful, and we have some beautiful minds either, and we have that talent, and we have that brilliance either. But due to lack of infrastructure and also due to lack of the economic activities, we are lacking much things. And of course, career counseling is something that need to be introduced at our school, from our school level to our towards our university level. And wherever you go, there should be a career counselor who could guide your parents and even the students, the young students, that what they want to be, what are their will. And it happens all around the world, especially I'm talking about the Western countries. Why they are much developed? Because they know that how to train and how to give a mechanized system to their kids and young lot, so that they could excel in their relevant field rather than going this and their to and fro motion like things. So these are the main things that we need to focus upon. And just coming to you, what do you think that youth activism or youth counseling can bring some change?
I think it has brought some change.
Likewise.
Right. I feel that a lot of things that we see in our younger lot, um, uh, Gen Z as they are called, right?
Yeah.
And Gen Z across the socio-economic strata, I think they're just more self-aware, right? Things that we learned about our own selves, to be able to challenge ourselves, to be able to just take a pause and not react on situations. That Tehrao, that calmness came with us with age, right? I think Gen Z is very intelligent that way. Um, and I think a lot of that is because um, they've I would actually take credit. The millennial generation should take credit, because I think at least within certain urban pockets of the country where people our age had that sort of access to education and the internet, and so whatever we could not experience and learnt later in life, we've tried to sort of pass that knowledge on earlier.
Exactly.
And so linking it to what you're saying about, does that help? Absolutely, it helps. So you don't have to have white hair to get a certain sort of understanding about life. And once you have that moment of epiphany, that moment of reckoning, and that moment where you feel, oh, this is a moment of truth. Oh my God, this is the simplest of all facts about a good way to live. It took me so long to get here and learn this. I think that is the moment that you immediately pass it on to someone younger. Right? So that person would not have to reinvent the wheel constantly, make all those mistakes and get there where you are at, say, 40, and just allow that person to have a chance at getting there earlier. And this sort of, and we generally talking about activism and trainings and workshops. I think this needs to begin at home with our children.
Right.
Have these conversations. Whatever I've learned, I need to pass it on to my son right now while he's 8. Because why should I wait for him to fall in his own ditches and learn those lessons? Right? Why not? If there are 2 3 things I think have worked for me, I need to tell him this is a better way to live, rather than doing this in a situation. Act like this rather than do like that, and your life will be easier.
Exactly.
Right? And we need to pass that on to our kids. So that sort of activism needs to happen at home first. But yes, at a more institutional level, I think both the government and the civil society organizations, we need to be more coherent and consistent in our effort to pass on that whatever we've learned, whether it's technical, mechanical information and knowledge, or whether it's something deeper in terms of the understanding of life. We need to just pass it on and let it sort of multiply.
You're much right, and you have taken so much initiatives, and you have run so much, campaigns. What do you say that what successful campaigns and initiatives that you have just taken and that worked really worked well?
I think the work, a lot of the students that we worked with back in the day, you're one of them, right? Um, I'm just, sometimes it's very overwhelming to meet them, to see how wonderful they're doing in their lives. And when they get back, and there's, maybe, and everybody always has an anecdote. In a certain workshop, a certain point hit a chord, right?
Right.
It would be different for different students. But so many years later, more than a decade later, they remember, and sometimes they talk about, how we applied that to ourselves and how it worked out for them. Um, so, yeah.
You're much right. And one more aspect, and that is the cultural barrier. What do you think that cultural barrier that holds many of our, talents and even just separate us from each another? What do you think? What the how to advocate such barriers so that everyone could overcome their scenarios, their syndromes, and even their own cluster that they have just put on themselves. What do you think that how you can advocate or how you are advocating such barriers?
So there's a lot of talk about generally within the government, within the civil society. There's a lot of talk about inclusion, right?
Yep.
So that's a very important buzzword these days. But that's a very important buzzword also, I'd say. And it's important because when we talk about inclusion, we talk about ensuring that no one is left behind. We're talking about, I'm a woman, so I would want to start with girls and women, right? We're talking about ensuring that every girl has an education. The government, I mean, the education sector plans, for instance, right now focus a lot across the provinces on how to bring more girls to school. Whether or not we're doing a good job is another debate, but at least on paper, that consciousness has been put on paper that more girls need to be brought to schools. We can't just say that boys' education is more important and just be done and over with that.
Exactly.
It can't work
Right.
like that, right? Then again, people who live with different forms of disability and how they, instead of being put in a box and children being sent to special education schools, and those special education schools are just we could sort of count the number of those institutes on these 10 fingers.
Right.
And imagine the population in the country, and then a significant, not a significant, but still, I mean, in terms of absolute numbers, hundreds of thousands of children and young people who live with so many forms of disabilities, right? But there's a lot of talk about ensuring that students, who don't have a cognitive impairment, they have no business being in these special education institutes. They need to go to regular education institutes.
Exactly.
Mingle with, rather than and it is the school's responsibility to ensure that, for instance, if a child cannot walk, there is a ramp for the wheelchair.
Right.
If a child has trouble seeing, there is equipment. Either if there's absolutely no vision, then braille. But a lot of children have maybe 10%, 20% vision,
Right.
and then have those sort of classrooms where bigger fonts can be used to accommodate the needs of such a child. So when we're talking about inclusion, and then we talk about inclusion in terms of including the transgender students, because what is their fault? Why should they not have an education? Are they not human? I mean, who are we to make that decision and ensure that their inclusion is also within the same schools as girls and boys? Who let's say, na? So the point I'm trying to make is that we there is I think the good thing is that there's a lot of understanding now and awareness, as we say, among the decision makers, that the way to go forward, not just in terms of education but employment, in every field, inclusion is the approach that needs to be adopted. Because without inclusion, we can't possibly, in terms of economic prosperity also, unless the entire workforce is productive and contributing, that sort of economic prosperity would still be a far dream, right? Um, but while we've been successful in putting it on paper, we've been a little lazy, a little more than a little
More
lazy,
than lazy, you're
right? In terms of really translating it, and that's where I think, rather than just saying it's the government's job and the government needs to do it, that's true. I mean, I always say that the sort of resources that the state has, and no single individual or organization can really, play that role. But at the end of the day, I do also believe that as an individual or as a private organization, a private entity, if there is even the slightest you can do, this is that moment where we don't wait for the government to step in and rescue us. We need to rescue each other, and we need to do it immediately.
You're much right, and indeed, one of the major aspects that you just highlighted about the transgenders, and even it is much bolstering that we came to know four transgenders were contesting during these elections,
Yes.
and some of the transgender they are just on the media, and some are running their own NGOs, and even they are just related to the development sector. Some of them they are the climate activists, and I came across with all those, and it was
Government officials,
exactly
yeah.
government officials. Even you're much right. Some are working there in sin, much at a much prestigious level as job they are doing there. And indeed, that we need to focus on all segments of the society, and we need to just bolster that they are part of us, and even they are Pakistani, and we have that. We need to share our encouragement, our dignity, and even we need to give them respect. This is the only thing that they require, and of course, they could be more productive than any other person, but the only thing is respect and the opportunity. And I just want to know that, as you talked about social media technology, and especially the latest trends, how much they could bring some diversifying change to have some educational reforms, and especially to advocate youth so that they could have some sort of good opportunity, or they could find their own future by their own will.
I think we've already seen how that's impacted, and in a good way and in bad ways also. So, I mean, with everything that created by the humankind, there's always that risk that it can go astray. So we've seen, obviously, there are things that can improve, but in terms of focusing on what's right, I think we've seen that social media is a platform that has given young people so much voice, right? I mean, imagine like a 20-odd-year-old influencer,
Right.
right? And the sort of clout, if that influencer has, say, 20,000 followers on Twitter, and if more, well, the more the merrier, right? The sort of clout
Exactly.
that young person would, and there are so many of these young people who enjoy that sort of clout, and even traditionally, the decision makers, you know, either bald or with a thick white set of hair.
Exactly.
They have to sit up and take notice because because there is an influencer, and that influence is coming from a young person. So that sort of power is being wielded, and I think uh, it can be harnessed further for so much more than just activism. For I think with all the internet outages we experience in the country, one industry that really severely takes a hit is that of freelancers. Now,
Exactly.
right? These are young kids
Hmm.
who are paying off their degrees by doing freelance work internationally, and the sort of money, if we just let them do what they're doing, because they know what they're doing and they're good at it, if we just let them do what they're doing without disrupting it for them, they they have brought so much foreign exchange in the country
Exactly.
with all the limitations.
Hmm.
And if we just let them, we don't even have to help them. We just have to let them be, and then just allow them to bring money inside the country. And I think that's the most important thing. More than, I know we're talking about social media, but I just keep going back to the way we need to change how we think, because unless that changes, we will not be able to empathize with that very frustrated 25-year-old who had to deliver an essay to someone sitting in Sweden and has done that, but there's no internet now suddenly,
Exactly.
right?
Right.
So what I'm trying to say is that unless we actually start empathizing with the struggle and the genius of that kid,
Hmm.
um, we won't allow that kid to prosper. And so we really need to understand that these are real people and they are intelligent kids, they're intelligent people, and and we might not know them by face, they might not be, you know, famous, but they are instrumental in bringing in so much foreign reserve to the country that we need, and also putting out a good name out there for us, right?
Exactly, exactly.
So yeah.
You're much right, and they are the ones who are not only the ambassadors of Pakistan, but they are the image builders of Pakistan. And indeed, you are much right that almost our IT industry that's just emerging, and we have crossed $3 billion
Yes.
annually. And even the IT minister, Dr. Umar Saif, I'm just fond of his reforms that he has just made in
Very
his
user friendly.
short tenure, exactly.
Yes.
And he just talked about that there are many youth and especially the freelancer friendly reforms that he has made, and especially with the advancement and especially within the arrival of this PayPal, the barriers will reduce, and of course we will see some good income that could be generated not by the young lot but also for our economy. It will be much better. And the audience, as we were just talking about the challenges that our young bulge is facing right now and what are the opportunities, and Miss Areeba Shahid, she just highlighted that how we can make them more promising, how we can make them more polishing, how we can garnish them and equip them with more latest technologies and even some more latest teachings, so that they could be more productive and they could be more fruitful for our country. And last but not the least, as we are in shout of time, I just want to know what is your message to our young lot who are listening us or who are watching us through our social media platforms. What would you say?
I would just say that it gets better. Very importantly, right? Because a lot of the frustration among young people at this age is that they're not being taken seriously. Maybe their grades aren't as good as they wanted or their families wanted. There's a whole different sort of struggle at that age, right?
Hmm.
It's a very confusing time. I mean, you are an adult, but nobody's really taking you seriously, and you want that sort of respect, but you really have nothing to show for yourself. And so I just want to say, first and foremost, it gets better. But it gets better when we make a choice and then stick to it, that we will make it better, right? Nothing is served on silver platters. And there's really no point in looking left and right and that person got it easy, why can't I? Well, uski kismat uska naseeb. So just focus on your own self. And we were earlier talking about career counseling. There's also one other thing that I really want young people to understand, that the way we know ourselves, no one else can,
Exactly.
right? And we always know which strengths we were sent down with. And the earlier we're able to identify those strengths within ourselves, the earlier we start leveraging them,
Okay.
right? So, to any and every young person who's listening, I would say just take a walk with yourself and observe yourself as a third person. That's very important, and see what behaviors work for you, which don't, um, where, what sort of, what subject comes naturally to you. You don't have to make an effort for it.
Mhm.
Identify patterns that make your life easier, and then start focusing more on them and leveraging them more, and you will be, the better will happen sooner than later.
You are much right, and thank you so very much, Miss Areeba Shahid, for being with us and sharing your views on this important
You're very
topic.
welcome.
And dear audience, Miss Areeba Shahid, the Executive Director of PYCA, Pakistan Youth Advocates, and she was just talking about that how youth can be more productive, how youth can bring some massive change, but there is a process of counseling. We can provide them a mechanism, we can provide them a platform, a fora, so that they could just learn from there. They could come to know that which path I have to adopt or which way I have to go. So these are the main things that we need to focus upon. And of course the government system we talk about, although we have some lack of funds, but the public-private partnership that could play a big role, I must say, to bring some massive change in the society. And of course, when we always keep on talking about the massive changes, we keep on talking about progress, we keep on talking about the educational reforms, that could only be possible with the help of some revenues. And how we can generate revenue, that we talked about a few sec before, and that is about that the IT sector. It could bring a massive change in the country. It could boost our economy. And the president, honorable president Dr. Arif, he keep on insisting wherever he goes, especially on the convocations of different universities, he keep on advocating that we need to focus upon IT sector. And even the IT minister, Dr. Umar Saif, he just highlighted that in the coming years we are gonna able to have our IT exports of around about 10 to 20 billion dollars, and these are still much lesser, but although we have adopted a path so that we can excel. With this, the audience, we are just signing off, and I'll be back after a short break. We'll be right back. Just stay with us.